Hey, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. This is episode 127, all about the dark feminine. Like, what is it? Why is it important? What's it all about? I got a hint for you. It's not what you think. If you're being newly introduced to the concept of the dark feminine, it's probably not what you think. It's not evil or scary or dark in the sense of like bad or demonic. It's actually been termed things like the loving darkness of your mother's womb, the space between. It has lots and lots of names. So today I've got author and feminine lifestylist Jonita D'souza. She's coming to us from India. She actually was born in India and then settled in England, but at the time of this episode, she was back in India where we recorded. What she's done is she's kind of combined the teachings of Indian feminine mysticism and shamanism in her work. So it's very different, but she facilitates a lot of sacred feminine retreats. She does lots of stuff with monthly moon circles and things like that. So she's just got a lot of experience with helping people to meet their own dark feminine, really walk that sacred path for yourself of climbing into the depths, going underneath the surface, climbing into the mystery within you. And so you can sort of plunge your own depths, if you will, and get to what is real and what is wanting to be expressed. Be checking on Instagram, Cherie.Burton, as well as our Women Seeking Wholeness private Facebook group. Asked to join that. We're going to be exploring the dark feminine all week. Every single day I have a post or a thought or something to contemplate around this because I feel like it's just such an important topic. Jonita, so beautiful to have you all the way from India.
Yes, so excited to be connecting across the oceans through this beautiful online opportunity. I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, thank you. And I was looking over your website and just kind of getting in touch with your vibe and what you're all about, and so aligned with this new feminine consciousness that's coming forward, where I don't think there's a place it hasn't reached yet. It's just one of the things I wanted to talk about today is, what do we do with this? Some aspects of it are unfamiliar. The new feminine consciousness, I shouldn't say new, it's ancient, but it's just making a debut in ways that I guess unsettling for some, and for others super exciting. And I think we flip back and forth not knowing what to do with this. So we're going to talk about that today. But give us a little bit of your background in terms of how this found you, and because you started life in India and then you eventually settled in England.
Yes.
So you probably live in both worlds, I'm assuming, both cultures.
Yes, it's quite fascinating because when I was growing up in India, and I come from a very privileged family in India, so I can assume that. And so I had all the independence to explore my dreams and, go for what I wanted. But still, I knew and I was very much aware and felt it on a regular basis that the society, and I'm talking like 90s and 80s and 90s mostly, was very male dominated. And I would watch all these Hollywood movies and I would think about like, oh my God, the white women have so much freedom. They can wear whatever they want and they can walk in the streets and they can be feminine, but I can't do that in India. And even though I want to, I never felt safe. So my idea as a growing teenager was that I should go to the West, and it is then when I will find my independence, my freedom as a woman, and I'll be able to express myself more freely. I grew up here in India and I started working in an IT company. So I was earning well. I was in a good society of people and good community where creativity was part of it. But I never felt safe to be just seen on streets.
Well, what do you mean by that? Just walking down as an everyday female, you felt unsafe. Yes. Was that in India and in England, or is this just preface in England?
India, and that was beginning to bother me. Daily grocery run, any little thing, there'll be plenty of eyes on you if you dress up, very well, and you try to adorn yourself. All eyes will be on you, and there was a lot of catcalling and all of that I've experienced. So I decided to shut down my feminine and became very, like a tomboy kind of character to keep myself safe. And I always dreamt of going to the West so that I can finally be feminine. And throughout my career in the IT industry, I got an opportunity then to go to London. And I went there and I was like, okay, I found my independence. Here I am. I'm free. I can walk freely. And soon I was caught up in the outward expression of, doing the sexy. And I was beginning to feel like this is not what I really wanted. I'm tired of, always dressing up to be accepted in the society, to be taken seriously. So there was a big hole. I didn't want to come back to India. I didn't want to stay in London because I felt like I don't understand what a woman should be in order to just be herself.
Did you have any kind of religious upbringing that affected that as well?
I grew up in a Christian family in India.
So no, you weren't in Hinduism or
no. So it's very ironic that I had to leave the Indian tradition to go to London, and whatever I experienced that brought me back to my roots here and discovered the aspect of the feminine in a very different way, like never before. So when I was in London, I just misused my freedom. I think I overdid it. I just got my freedom. So I was, I went into drugs, alcohol, just bad relationships, everything that I could do, as a crazy girl. and soon I was back in the darkness of, my life, where I realized that I don't understand what it means to be a woman. How am I supposed to be?
Right.
And all of that.
Did you have any role models? Like, I know you said you would watch different Hollywood movies. Had you attached to anyone like on YouTube, like a teacher like Oprah or Brene Brown or somebody in your own culture that just inspired you? Did you have any role models?
Not really. It was just the Hollywood movies and, MTV, pretty much. So, that was my idea of the Western world, being in India. So, I didn't have much idea. And that was it. That was my exposure to the Western world. And it didn't help me as much as I thought I would by being in London. But then I realized that, women in the East are longing for that expression of freedom of expression. And there is subtle layer of suppression there. Women in the West have that freedom of expression, but then there is an emptiness inside.
Sure. I was going to say, I mean, I think that there is a perception of this privilege or what have you, where, there's freedom there with privilege, or there's more, but there's these self-contained prisons, right, that people create. And sometimes
so much concern is given just to look good. Like everything is about looking good, that we just forget who we truly are.
Exactly. But you ultimately decided to stay in England, and you kind of found your happy place with that. And then there was an empowerment for you. There was an awakening for you. And, because I just look at the things you're teaching now. You call yourself a feminine lifestylist. I'm assuming like connection to the divine feminine in that, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What happened at this one point in my life in London was, everything fell apart. Like my health went really bad. I had eczema all over my skin. So I was no longer feeling beautiful. My father in India passed away. I was into an abusive relationship and nothing just fit into place. And it was that moment where I was scrolling through Facebook literally, and I found an ad for an online for a circle, which was an essence workshop. And I decided to give it a go because it said something about women find your essence, and I was so desperate. I wanted to know what am I supposed to do with myself, because none of the steroids was healing my eczema. I was on heavy dosage and it was very painful, and I wasn't feeling good about myself. I was depressed because of my father's loss, and yeah, all of that. And so I decided to go to this essence workshop. It was only £10 at that time for a 2 hour class. So I thought, all right, I'll just go sit by the door. I'll see if it suits me. If not, I'll leave and I'll figure out. And interestingly, I sat there for the entire 2 hours and I cried my eyes out because that lady there, and she was from Glastonbury in the UK, which is a very sacred land there. And she spoke something that touched me very deeply. She said something like, the most powerful gift you can give to someone is to show them their essence.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
That made me cry because I didn't know what my essence was. Yeah. And yeah, so that was the beginning. I cried for 2 hours, and the women, and I was apologizing for crying out like a baby, and I couldn't control. And the women around me were so graciously holding my hand, and they were like, "It's okay, it's fine, just be." And I realized for the first time what a power of circle is for women.
Sure. It's everything, actually. It's everything. If a woman can't find her tribe and regularly connect to them, and I'm not talking about the tribe she was born into. Your soul tribe finds, like, they're different than the one you're born into. Like, you can be in that tribe of your culture and all of the things that were handed to you that you inherited at birth. But eventually your soul is literally calling out like a beacon in frequency, find me, tribe, please find me. And they do find you. So the fact that that workshop found you and has led you into this beautiful, this beautiful space.
And that was the beginning of my journey of, okay, I've got to find out what my essence is. And the lady said, your primary essence as a woman is your feminine essence. So that began my journey of exploring my femininity. And and there came, my company was born out of that as well, which is called Exploring Femininity right now. I started going to Glastonbury every weekend to
I love Glastonbury. I've only been there one time. I went there. It was called let me think. Avalon Priestess Pilgrimage was the name of it. And that's how I met two amazing facilitators and teachers of the feminine there. And one lives in Egypt, one lives in England. And we've continued to stay in touch. And I've actually had both of them on this podcast. There's something magical about that place, but extremely deeply spiritual. I would say it's one of the most sacred places on the planet. Would you agree?
I would. It's the heart chakra, as they say, of Mother Earth. And now I have the privilege of running dark feminine retreats in Avalon, in Glastonbury, and they are so powerful. I think the land does half of the magic, when you enter that space of dimension. And that was the beginning of my goddess exploration as well, because if you see the town of Glastonbury, it's just magical goddess portal. Everything is so
goddess. I want to come back to dark feminine, because this has been brought up more and more when I talk to and interview different teachers. I've actually had my own exploration of what that is, and I kind of look at it more like shadow work and still point creation, the darkness. But some people could misconstrue it maybe with like an evil connotation. And so I just want to, let's maybe define that for our listeners, just because when you say dark feminine, you think of like Maleficent in the Disney movies, or, you know, all of the Disney characters had this wicked female character that was destroying. So let's maybe just dive into what is the dark feminine for you? And you say you do these retreats, right, for the dark feminine. Let's explore that.
Yeah, sure. I want to acknowledge what you said here, that a lot of people think differently about the dark feminine, in the sense that there is a lot of resistance, or what I have experienced when I started working with, and when I put my work out, I've got a huge amount of resistance, even from the spiritual community, because many people came up to me saying that we should be concentrating on the light consciousness, and we should be talking about the light, but the darkness brought me to light, and I cannot, as a woman, ignore it. And I realized that the dark feminine part in every woman is just the unconscious part of the feminine wanting to become conscious. It's not about good or bad, it's just an unconscious part wanting to become conscious, because that's where the juice lies, that's where the mystery lies. The mystery is in the darkness, and that's where, from there, we can create. And when I started doing my research more about the darkness and the dark feminine energy, I was so amazed at many ancient traditions from around the globe, how this dark feminine aspect was revered. Many call them as the source of infinite possibilities and creation.
Yeah. That was, you see these ancient relics of like the Black Madonna, the Dark Madonna, and it isn't necessarily about skin color as much as it is about what you're saying, that there was this reverence for this depth, because darkness is depth. When you look at outer space, it's dark, right? So there's that aspect of spaciousness and also wisdom, deep depth. Yeah, let's talk about that. Explore that a little bit.
Darkness as the space of in between. And in my journey, I had experienced this dark feminine energy that fully during one of the times during Easter. I think it was 4 years ago, when I was yet another in a journey of dark night of the soul. So you think you may get it only once, but no, it comes back. And there was a moment I was really down, and it was during the Easter time, and that's when I felt the initiation with Mary Magdalene. And a revelation just happened within me that, people talk about death during Good Friday. People talk about return of light on Sunday. And so what happens in between? What happens between death and the return of light? There is this darkness, there's this space. What happens on this Saturday, for example? What happens
in the entombment in between the death and the 3-day resurrection of Christ, which is totally a Magdalene. That's where her depth comes in. That's where her archetype and her actual historical power comes in. When everybody else was like going away, including all the apostles, and she was in it. I love that you had an initiation with her because she's coming through to so many people. She's
now in the time.
So sorry, continue your story. It's really fascinating. I just had to insert that.
So I was really fascinated. I was feeling so down, and I've been already working with all of these divine feminine energies, and I know a lot of embodiment practices and tools that I can apply on myself. And I was aware that I can pull myself back out of this dark night of the soul. But what happens in between? Should I hurry myself, or should I stay in and hang in for a while and not become afraid of this moment? Allow this space in between and see, because from the bottom you cannot go any more down.
No.
Further. And
I think there's just a deep fear we have of this void.
You're going to get lost.
Yeah, you're going to get lost. You're going to be alone, which is a huge psychic fear we have.
Yeah. And I allowed myself to feel that fear. Often I have noticed, even in personal development or spiritual development, the moment we have a fear or resistance, we go into a processing, like, okay, let's do this to get over this. And how about let's stay in there and see if we can get comfortable with that. As women, we experience darkness every month through our cycle. This is an innate part of the yin inside of us. Every moon cycle, we go through a phase of darkness. Every menstruation cycle, we go through a phase of darkness. The earth goes through a phase of darkness.
The moon, the dark goes dark, yeah. And there's just that, almost like a stopping point. So stillness. So when I think of the dark now, like, why are we afraid of the dark? Why did that get programmed into us so young? It's because we have to stop. We have to, like you said, we have to be with it. We have to be in that stillness, which is still point creation, where everything started, where your actual conception started.
Yeah, exactly. The womb, it's a dark place to be. We come from the womb. And what I then decided and what I created then is the dance with the dark feminine. I allowed myself to be in that space and move the emotions through my body, through embodiment practices, especially breath work, instead of putting my energy into running away from it or figuring it out. And that was the sweet opening that the darkness then showed me. And I just realized.
Sorry, was it like one moment in time, or can you trace it back to like one experience you had where you stopped running away or feeling chased by it, and you just, literally like.
Yeah, it was exactly the experience of the initiation with Mary Magdalene. I think I was held in her space during this Easter time 4 years ago, as I mentioned earlier, that through her wisdom, I think I was shown that I have to be in this space and it is safe. So how can I use my femininity, my embodiment, my body to feel this and be okay, not fear this? Because this is where my power lies. And it was scary because I was in the verge of, total breakdown. And I said, okay, I have nothing else to lose. I'll go for it. And I started moving my body, breath work, and started using my voice, and a lot came through. I realized that there is a power inside of me that I no longer have to be afraid of. I can be powerful. That
really wanted to come through. It really wanted to express. Like you said, it was this, I love how you categorize the dark feminine as an unconscious part of ourselves, or unconscious parts of ourselves that are literally dying to be conscious. They want to be noticed. They want to be seen. The huge feminine need is for us to be seen and heard and validated. So if we have parts inside of us that we've been told are not safe to express, or are going to hurt us, or are going to lead us down the wrong path, or whatever, if we don't find a way to access them and let them express. So you literally can trace it back to that moment in time where you felt like you were being held and supported through Mary Magdalene to be able to let them come out. So can you give us I'm trying to take myself back to when I had a very, very similar experience, but it came in layers later. Like I felt her, and then it was a series of experiences I had years later.
Yeah.
that I put it all together because it was like too much for me. Or she was just letting me know that I was being held and supported by that beautiful, feminine, nourishing, life-giving, sustaining support.
Yeah, yeah. It's, from that moment on, it felt like a river opened, a river of everlasting love that opened. And I remember certain voices in my head which said, like, darkness is not a place of fear, but a place of complete, unconditional acceptance of yourself, just like the loving darkness of your mother's womb. So from then on, every time I felt an emotion which was dense, I decided to stay with it. And I would start speaking to Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene and, like, please help me. What is going on? What am I supposed to do? I'm scared. And what am I supposed to do? And I would journal, and I will move my body. And I think the movement of the body was the biggest opening into realizing that this was actually fueling my creativity. A year later, I was able to start facilitating week-long Reclaim Your Dark Feminine retreats. And I then realized, okay, so this was birthing through me the entire last year through my own visceral experience. And the women that came in from all around the continents were just a testimony that I wasn't doing it for myself. She was taking me because I was supposed to just learn how to hold space for myself in this darkness, so that these women here feel comfortable and don't think that they are some crazy witch, mad bitch.
Yeah. Holding space for yourself is an art, and it's a skill. And it takes, for me, it feels like a trust fall sometimes. I don't know if you're familiar, but a lot of people do these things in workshops when where we were kids. Even I remember doing it in Girl Scouts, where you literally just have people behind you and you put your hand and you just fall back. So it's like you're doing that sort of on this cosmic level, where you're like, okay, I don't see anything out here in terms of my external environment that truly can hold and contain, unless you're in a brilliant retreat setting like you're talking about. I hold retreats as well, and I know that they can be life-changing because they do give you that containment and that boundary safety that you need to allow things to come forward. But when you're learning this and you're journaling and you're not at a retreat and you're just in your own domain and things are kind of chaotic around you, creating that. And this is happening planetary wide because of COVID. People have been forced underground, literally, to the dark. We could call it the dark feminine, the dark masculine, where you're now confronted with your shadows, not only your own shadows, but the shadows on earth in governments and systems and stuff. So creating and holding space. We say that a lot in the spiritual vernacular in different teachers. But how, if you were to break down like holding space for yourself, what does that look like?
So for me, it takes me back to my womb. And this is the place I feel that we as women have this immense amount of power, and which has been underutilized.
It's like a portal.
Yeah.
It's like a portal. That's how I see the womb now. And I did not learn this until literally like 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm 52. And it's now being talked about everywhere. So I love that you're going there. Because the womb is where we started our life in our mothers.
Exactly. And there are so many scientific researchers now. The science is catching up. I'm really glad that our guts have these millions of nerves that reacts first to the environment. When we enter a room, it's the nerves of our guts that send signals to our brain, and then the brain reacts to the situation. So hence the term gut feeling. And on an energetic level, this powerhouse in and around the womb space resides in all of us. And what has happened is, for most of us modern day women, this place has become cold and damp. That's what they say in Ayurvedic traditions. And that is usually because of our suppression of our emotions throughout our life, and also the lineage that we come from. So the womb is pretty much the storehouse of energy, emotions, and memories. We unconsciously store our emotions from our traumatic experiences, anything like fear, stress, abandonment, failure, anger, rejection. All of this is stored in the womb. So for me, holding space is to coming back to this place, which is this 3 inches below our navel, and providing comfort, attention, intention to this part of my body. And the more I connect with this part of my body, the more she is showing me how I can stand up for myself, how I can make my presence mark in this world without being overgiving. But the way of the womb is, again, very mysterious. It doesn't speak the language of the word. When I started working with the womb and bringing my hands, breathing and listening, and my teacher at that time told me, listen to what your womb wants, ask her every day, what does she need? And she would say things like crayons or some orange juice, and I'd be like, what do you want me to do? It doesn't make sense. And
also a lot of like that deep inner child needing the unconscious unmet needs of your inner child.
Yeah, and my teacher said, just give yourself 21 days, note down what she needs, and try to give to her as much as you can. And what I was doing in doing so, it was that I was building trust that I'm listening to you, and through that process, I was fine-tuning the voice of the wisdom that she had for me. And a big part of these dark feminine retreats that I've been holding space for, what I've noticed is that us women carry a lot of anger in our womb. And we work with that dark feminine, a lot of anger comes out. It is from our experiences, our lifetime, our past lives, our ancestors, what we have inherited from our mothers, grandmothers. So that's another box of Pandora to work with.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because I studied a lot about the gut-brain balance and multiple braining, and how, 90% of our body's neurotransmitters are produced in the gut and all of those things. You don't necessarily link those in with the womb, because you look at your womb as a different system altogether. And for men, they do have, I guess, an energetic womb, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's called the hara.
Yes, whatever. That sounds great. But for, the average person to just be like, okay, because you're right. When a baby is born, everything's being processed in their gut. They're literally trying to digest life. And that's where colic comes and everything. But sometimes we carry that forward. We carry that into our lives, or just when things don't feel safe, when we feel misunderstood in those things. So it makes sense that that would be stored in the gut area, because we don't have the logical ability to analyze and process everything with our logic brain. So it gets literally swallowed down. And where does it get swallowed down? To that region of the body, which is our center. It's our literal center.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, and the source of our feminine wisdom.
So, hey, so when we're talking about, so when people start to hear phrases like womb awakening, womb wisdom, the way of the womb, those are all sort of these all-encompass, like whittled down to this all-encompassing idea of accessing your depths and your knowing. Not what people are telling you, not what your expectations are. So for me, it's like this deep invitation to come back into who you actually are and what you actually want. That's the second chakra, right? We're talking creativity.
The funny thing I've noticed is that most of the time women know that, hear that, they just don't respond to that voice. And that's the thing we have to come to terms with. Because she is always talking to us, but we continue to analyze and just go on by our days thinking, okay, I can figure out some other way. And I've done that most of my life until I knew this.
Same. Yeah. Well, and that's where the anger comes from. Because we could just be in a setting where we can see some injustice happening and we feel like we need to act or do something or say something. And we get this feeling or this voice say, and we don't because we're afraid. We do that enough times because we don't feel that safety that you were talking about. You don't feel safe walking on the street, so you're going to get catcalled or whatever. That scenario plays out in religious spaces. That scenario plays out in schools, in our communities, in our neighborhoods. So when that happens enough times, then we don't even know we're angry. We're like, that's a cauldron. That womb is a cauldron that's just boiling.
Exactly. Yeah.
At some point, Mount St. Helens is going to erupt. It's, yeah.
We become ticking time bombs, and this is also the reason for a lot of menstrual pain for those women who are in the bleeding phases of their life. It is one of the primary reasons for menstrual pain and other womb-related physical illnesses and disease, I like to call rather than illnesses, like the fibroids and cysts, and we have all those
like endometriosis.
Yes, apparently that's one of the biggest operation done on women, which on the womb. The endometriosis, it's called the hysterectomy or the C-section. So we can really think and imagine the scale of womb trauma we as women hold as a collective.
Sure. And I have had a C-section. My first birth was a C-section. The others were not. And I didn't realize how much I was holding in that space just to heal, It's interesting too, to really climb into what are the beliefs, what would make that cauldron boil? As women, what have we been believing that isn't true, and it's making us really mad? Estimation. What are those things that are just making us boil over?
So one of the things, so we do a session called the womb rage, and what I've noticed is one of the rage, the anger that women carry in their womb, it is a secondary emotion. The primary emotions to that rage or anger is either fear or sadness. So I think it is upon ourselves to become really truly honest about and ask ourselves, like, what is the sadness inside of us that we are suppressing, and that can be really subtle, being denied something as a child that you've been carrying and it's been playing up again and again, or it could be some kind of fear through some lived experience. And from there, we can break down into more experiences to work with. But what I have noticed is that the primary emotions for our anger is some kind of fear, some kind of sadness. And
It's like your little girl wanted those crayons and that orange juice because for whatever reason, you were denied orange juice and crayon at some point.
Yeah. And oftentimes, if you look into fear, the fear comes from some kind of anxiety or some kind of worry of the past or the future. And the sadness comes from some kind of loss or disappointment or some kind of discouragement from the past.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very interesting experience to break down your anger into small layers
Right.
to go to the roots of. And once you recognize that, you can then use that opportunity to make it your creative gift. I think that's why we as women are given this anger and rage. Not to go out like a ticking bomb, but to use it to serve us.
Yes.
Because I believe that our anger has a story to tell about ourselves.
Yeah, the gifts are forged in the cauldrons, if you will. The gifts that we're to receive here, even those things we were denied as children, and they all serve a purpose to bring us back to at some point in our development. We wake up to these unmet needs, these unconscious parts of ourselves, and we meet them.
Yeah.
We either keep denying them or we then meet them. But I have to tell you here, sometimes that's really hard for women to do because they think it's not spiritual, it's selfish, it's trivial. It might go against some of their programming they received growing up, some of the teachings they received. And so there's a struggle or a wrestle with, okay, well, now I know what this unmet need is for my inner child and my inner teenager, whatever, my inner feminine. How do I reconcile this need? It doesn't feel safe to give this to myself now. How would you, I guess maybe that goes back to holding space for yourself, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, but it's really good that you are making showing us the circle pretty much because I think this is a day-to-day thing to tackle for us women. I've been working with this and you've been working with this energy, and we still encounter these kind of emotions where we feel the trigger or the fear or the uncertainty. So I don't think which is why I like to work with the dark feminine energy. It's not about getting rid of all these emotions. It's about understanding these emotions and always circle back to hold space. Remember to hold space for yourself and allow yourself to be in that space. You don't have to work it out all the time, and that's the beauty. And oftentimes that stillness provides the opening. I think we are so used to figuring out things as women. We are so good at.
It's like, what tools do I have? Oh, and that's great. It's great to use the tools that are out here because they can help you create more safety. But the true, I guess, work, I don't even like that word, but the true invitation is to put everything outside of you in a healthy respect. People, tools, leaders, teachings, everything. And practices you've learned, all that. And then just to take the invitation to go within and really just, I have a practice where I just envision like I'm becoming almost in this fetal position inside of myself. And I'm like, okay, now I feel this literally like the umbilical cord to mother's womb cosmically, which it used to not feel safe, but now totally does. Like the connection to the earth and the pulse of the earth and the how I'm being nourished on the other side of the veil. I have my own construct of what that is. But just going way down inside and just like nestling into that fetal Cherie seems to take me there. And then I will get a glimpse or a knowing, but I have to just take everything in the world and just put it away. Yeah. And many people, and for a long time, I was afraid to do that. It's like, well, I've learned so much. I've done so much. I've gathered so much, right?
Yeah, so
Everything
much,
I
yeah.
gathered led me to this place of like being fetal Shri again. So
I think that's the biggest gift, because that's what human being is all about. We are the being, so the way you're describing your holding space is taking us into the state of being, isn't it? And
yes, and not like baby Shri knew nothing. She was just love.
yeah.
And she would just show me and feed me and nourish me.
And sometimes non-action is the biggest action you can take in that moment, and which we are not comfortable with.
No.
And it comes through practice only.
But I love everything that you're saying, and meeting your dark feminine. It's not scary. There may be some things that arise that have some emotion, like you say, sadness or fear. Those are usually the primary emotions that we felt as children, that we feel even coming to Earth, and that trauma of coming here as a soul to Earth. It's like, what did I get myself into? But but meeting your dark feminine is like coming back home.
Absolutely.
So as we kind of wrap this discussion up, is there anything that you would add? I mean, because I know you specialize in helping people with burnout and exhaustion. And so how does the meeting of the dark feminine, what have you seen? You mentioned movement and you mentioned journaling, which are huge to access this feminine inside of us. What else would you add to her as we kind of close out our discussion on this dark feminine?
So in the Taoist tantric feminine arts, they talk about the three golden elixirs, which is the sound, breath, and the movement.
Sound, breath, and movement?
Yes.
Golden elixirs. Wow. And that's the Taoist tradition?
Yes. So if you see, a lot of Taoist embodiment practices includes making some kind of sound through some kind of hand movements, and it involves some kind of breath work, an idea of in and out. So I think when we learn how our body wants to, I think, it's good to know a lot of different practices, but then it's also important to allow yourself to be led. So when next time you are angry or disappointed and you feel the dense emotion, put on this music and try to notice how you're breathing, how you want to breathe. Maybe you want to breathe heavily. Maybe you can slow down and see how your hands want to move. See how your head wants to. Maybe you want to bang your head, not against the wall.
Do we have so much stiffness and tension because we're just trying to conform? We're just trying to like fit in.
Maybe you want to push some invisible walls. So I think these kind of flow really helps us to come back to our essence. And I always invite women to explore it for themselves.
Beautiful. And so people can find your Facebook group. You want to explain where they can find you on Facebook? And I'm assuming asked to join your group?
Yeah, that would be great. Exploring Femininity Sisterhood group is my group on Facebook. They can find my page is also called Exploring Femininity, so they can find me there and join the group from there. I'll love to interact and answer any further questions on these topics.
Perfect. Well, it's been really enlightening talking to you, and it's very affirming to me personally and inspiring to see another woman who's just in it and leading people to that, because it's not easy work. It's brave work to explore the unconscious parts and hold space for people to do that. And then to just make it your thing is really inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. I love how you are holding space and how you're holding the container for this conversation to unfold. We touched into some really deep topics, and I think you played a very equal role in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, and may this be a week that you really find your unconscious parts of you that want to become conscious, that you listen. It's not about being good or bad, right or wrong, whatever. It just is. I love how Jonita talked about it just being whatever needs brought to light. So it has to start in the darkness first, has to germinate, and then we have to turn the light on or bring it or birth it into the world. So may you find your tribe. May you find the people that midwife your dreams and help you express yourself authentically and support you and validate you. And I hope that you know that this is a safe space for you, coming into Women Seeking Wholeness Facebook group, as well as following me on Instagram and just nestling into parts of you that need to be validated, heard, and instructed even, or given permission to express. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.